Imagine being buried alive for stealing a loaf of bread, not as punishment, but as the law. For thousands of years, civilizations didn't just execute criminals, they created legal systems so cruel, so methodical, that death would have been mercy. These weren't rogue acts of violence, they were written into law, approved by councils, celebrated by crowds. And here's what nobody tells you. Some of these laws weren't designed to punish crime. They were designed to control you, to make you so terrified of stepping out of line that you'd police yourself. 6 ancient legal codes, 6 methods of suffering so extreme, historians still debate whether they were justice or something far darker. Because when you look closer, these weren't just laws, they were warnings. And the question nobody wants to ask is this: if these were considered normal then, what are we accepting as normal now that future generations will look back on in horror? Babylon, 1750 BC. King Hammurabi creates what historians call the first comprehensive legal code. 282 laws carved into stone. Sounds civilized, right? Except here's what they don't teach you in history class. Law 195 stated that if a son struck his father, his hands would be cut off. Not imprisoned, not fined, legally dismembered. Law 196 went further, an eye for an eye, but only if you were the same social class. If a nobleman blinded a commoner, he just paid a fine. But if a commoner injured a nobleman, they'd destroy his eye in the public square while crowds watched. This wasn't about justice, it was about maintaining hierarchy through terror. But here's where it gets darker. These mutilations were performed by official legal executioners. There were techniques, protocols, medical procedures to ensure you survived the punishment. Because the point wasn't death. The point was that you'd live the rest of your life as a warning to others, a walking billboard of what happens when you challenge the system. Historians found records of entire families begging to pay execution fees instead. They'd rather their loved one die than survive as a legally sanctioned cripple. Think about that. Death was the merciful option, and this was considered progressive law for its time. Ancient Persia had a legal execution method so disturbing that Greek historians thought it was propaganda. They called it scaphism, the boats. Here's how it worked according to legal records. The accused would be tried and sentenced. Then came the procedure. They'd trap you between 2 boats or hollowed logs, leaving only your head, hands, and feet exposed. They'd force-feed you milk and honey until you developed severe diarrhea. Then they'd pour more honey on your exposed body parts and leave you floating in a stagnant pond. The insects would come. First the flies, then the wasps. Then as your own waste accumulated in the boats, you'd develop infections, gangrene. The Greek historian Plutarch documented a case where a soldier named Mithridates survived 17 days like this. 17 days of being eaten alive by insects while slowly rotting in your own filth. But here's what makes this truly horrifying. This wasn't a punishment for murder or treason. Records suggest it was used for desertion, insubordination, sometimes even religious offenses. And it was legal, written into military and civil codes. There were official procedures for constructing the boats, designated execution sites, which means someone sat down and designed this, drew up plans, tested methods, made it efficient. And the question nobody asks is why this specific torture? Why the boats? Some historians believe it wasn't about punishment at all. It was about public display, about making sure everyone walking past that pond saw what happened when you disobeyed. The screams could be heard for miles, and that was the point. Roman blood sport legislation, death as entertainment. Rome didn't just allow gladiatorial combat, they legislated it. The Lex Iulia de Vi Publica made certain crimes punishable by damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts. You'd be sent into the arena unarmed to face lions, bears, or bulls while thousands cheered. This was law, approved by the Senate, funded by taxes. But here's what they never show in the movies. These weren't always quick deaths. Records from the Colosseum describe elaborate theatrical executions. Condemned prisoners would be forced to reenact mythological deaths, tied to stakes as animals were released one by one. Some executions were scheduled to last hours, with breaks for the crowd to eat lunch. The legal documents are chilling. There were categories. Different crimes got different animals, different methods of binding. A petty thief might face dogs. A deserter would get the bulls. Someone convicted of sacrilege? They designed something special. And here's the part that should disturb you. This wasn't considered cruel. It was entertainment. Family entertainment. Children attended. Nobles brought snacks. The legal system didn't just permit this, it required it. Judges had quotas. Certain festivals demanded a minimum number of executions for the games to be considered legitimate, which raises an uncomfortable question. How many people were convicted, not because they were guilty, but because the arena needed bodies?
Law 4. Medieval breaking wheel, state-sanctioned shattering. Medieval Europe created a legal execution device so brutal it remained in use until the 1800s, the breaking wheel. And this wasn't some Dark Age relic, this was codified law. The Constitutio Criminalis Carolina, the legal code of the Holy Roman Empire, specifically outlined when and how the wheel should be used. The procedure was documented in legal texts. The condemned would be tied to a large wooden wheel. Then, an executioner, certified and legally appointed, would use an iron bar to systematically break every major bone in their body. Arms first, then legs, then the chest and spine. The legal code specified the number of blows. Different crimes received different numbers. Theft might be 8 breaks, murder could be 20 or more. But here's what makes this truly medieval. After the breaking, you weren't dead. That was the point. They'd weave your shattered body through the spokes of the wheel and hoist it up on a pole in the town square. You'd hang there, broken but alive, sometimes for days, as birds pecked at you and infections set in. This was called the coup de grace only if the judge showed mercy and ordered a final blow to the chest or throat. But mercy wasn't automatic. It had to be written into the legal sentence. Records show some victims survived on the wheel for 3 days. 3 days of broken bones, exposed to the elements, while the town went about their business below. Children walked past on their way to school. Vendors set up market stalls in view of your suffering. And it was all perfectly legal, documented, regulated. The executioner would even submit expense reports for the wheel's maintenance. Law 5. Chinese LINGCHI, the death of 1,000 cuts. China's legal system included a punishment so precise, so methodical, that it required trained specialists. LINGCHI, slow slicing. And this wasn't folklore, this was law. The Great Qing Legal Code, used until 1905, explicitly listed crimes that warranted LINGCHI: high treason, killing one's parents, particularly severe murders. But here's what photographs from the early 1900s reveal. This wasn't random torture, it was a surgical procedure. Legal executioners trained for years to learn the exact sequence of cuts, which areas to slice to maximize pain without causing death, how deep to cut, how long to wait between cuts. Medical records suggest the process could last hours, sometimes days if the executioner was skilled enough. The legal philosophy behind it is even more disturbing. The Chinese concept of filial piety meant your body was a gift from your parents. To die with your body intact was essential for the afterlife. LINGCHI destroyed that. It wasn't just killing you, it was erasing your spiritual future. And the law knew this. That's why it was reserved for the worst crimes. But here's the question historians can't answer. Who decided where the line was? Archives show people were sentenced to LINGCHI for relatively minor offenses if a judge wanted to make an example. Political dissidents, religious leaders, people who challenged authority. The law said treason, but the definition of treason was whatever those in power decided. And once you were sentenced, there was no appeal. Photographs exist of these executions, real photographs, people standing around watching as a human being was methodically carved apart over hours, and everyone there thought this was normal, legal, necessary. Law 6. Athenian APOTYMPANISMOS, democracy's dark secret. Ancient Athens, the birthplace of democracy, the cradle of Western civilization. They also had a legal execution method that makes you question everything you learned about ancient Greece. Apotympanismos, public display crucifixion. But not like Roman crucifixion. This was worse. The condemned would be tied to a board in the public agora, the heart of Athens, where democracy was practiced. Then they'd be left there without food or water. No nails, no immediate violence, just exposure. But here's the truly Greek part. This was legal punishment for crimes against the state. And in Athens, crimes against the state were surprisingly easy to commit. Speaking against the wrong politician, questioning the gods publicly, even losing a major military campaign could result in this sentence. Records show some victims lasted a week on those boards, a week in the sun while Athenian citizens debated philosophy and politics just meters away, while democracy happened around your dying body. And that's not accidental, That's the point. Historians believe APOTYMPANISMOS was designed to be a visual reminder in the very space where democratic decisions were made, a warning that democracy has limits, that free speech has boundaries, that the state, even a democratic one, will tolerate only so much dissent. The philosopher Socrates was offered this fate before he chose hemlock rather than face Athens' legal torture method. And this was the society that gave us concepts of justice, reason, and civic virtue. 6 legal codes, 6 methods of suffering that weren't crimes. They were the law, approved, regulated, considered normal by millions of people across thousands of years. But here's what should keep you up at night. Every single one of these societies believed they were civilized. They believed their legal systems were just, fair, necessary for social order. The Babylonians thought mutilation was progressive. The Romans considered arena deaths entertainment for children. Medieval Europeans saw nothing wrong with breaking people on wheels in town squares. The Chinese believed slow slicing was appropriate justice. The Persians thought boat torture was a deterrent. The Athenians practiced torture in the same space they invented democracy. They all had reasons, justifications, legal frameworks that made sense to them. So here's the question nobody wants to answer. What are we doing right now in our legal systems that future generations will look back on with the same horror? What punishments do we consider normal that our descendants will see as barbaric? Solitary confinement that drives people insane? Legal systems that punish poverty? Sentences that destroy families? We look back at ancient laws and think we've evolved, but have we? Or have we just gotten better at hiding the cruelty behind bureaucracy and sterile procedure? These ancient laws weren't worse than death because they were painful. They were worse because they were legal, because entire societies agreed they were acceptable, which means the real horror isn't what happened thousands of years ago. It's what we're accepting right now, without question. Because in another 1,000 years, someone might be looking back at our laws the same way we're looking at these. And the crowds who watched the breaking wheels and the boat torture and the arena executions, they thought they were the civilized ones too.